You ever seen a musical that feels like it's so desperate not to be a musical with every single fibre of its being? Because I have. Before I get into this review, I have to say, I don't think I've come across a musical that splits people so finely down the middle as Girl from the North Country does. Now, this has had many runs. It played at the Old Vic, then it transferred to the West End and played 2 different venues, both the Gielgud and the Noel Coward. It's gone to Broadway, and now it's back at the Old Vic for a summer season. And when I was telling people, oh, I'm going to go see Girl from the North Country, what did you think of it? I would either get people saying it's a masterpiece, or people saying they struggled to sit through it. I don't think I came across people who were in between very much. It was very strongly one way or the other, and honestly, when I hear that, I have to go and see that piece of theatre, because I think it shows how wonderfully subjective this is. I haven't said it in a very long time, and I feel like I need to bring it back, but theatre is what? Subjective, so I had to make my own opinion, and sadly, I'm on the negative side, so why didn't Girl from the North Country appeal to me? Where did it have potential, and where did it let me down? Let's find out. But if you haven't seen my face before, hi, I'm Ellie, I talk about theatre. I am the most chaotic person on the internet. I do reviews, I do discussions, I do game shows, versus brackets, tier lists, rankings, and if any of that sounds interesting to you, please consider hitting like and subscribe, it really helps me, it helps out the channel. But let's dive into Girl from the North Country. Okay, to start by talking about this musical, I feel like I'm gonna have to kind of throw into the air how I normally discuss theatre. I will normally start with the story, then the music, and then set, and we're gonna switch things around a little bit today. But I'm going to start by telling you the plot and telling you the basic summation of what kind of creates all the issues for this musical for me. Girl from the North Country is very inspired, as the writer Conor McPherson discusses in his writer's note, around Eugene O'Neill style plays. When McPherson was listening to the music, trying to envision a plot that could link all of these different Bob Dylan songs, as if you don't know, this is a jukebox musical featuring the music of Bob Dylan, he could only envision this Eugene O'Neill style play. This play set in America, set in the 1930s, and that kind of tightly written, character-driven drama. Now, I want to say I love a good play. The best theatre this year has been plays. The Years, Kyoto, Kenrex, Stereophonic, all extremely character-driven plays. They're my favourite type of plays. So, if anything, Girl from the North Country should be my bread and butter. I should be eating this up. This is everything I love about a play. However, the problem comes with the simple fact that this is a musical. So, let's start with the music. Normally, I would start with the story. Let's start with the music. This is a jukebox musical featuring the music of Bob Dylan, as I have discussed, and if we forget about anything else, if we look at just the quality of the music, it's great. Of course it's great. It's Bob Dylan's work. This music is so effortlessly haunting. It's so impactful. There's so many amazing songs within this musical. Songs that I will also admit are extremely well staged, with really cool dynamics and really cool imagery created from the choreography and the staging. But when you're crafting a jukebox musical, you could have the greatest music of all time. You could have legends and legends crafting magnum opuses. Magnum opus, I guess. But if you're placing them into a musical and it doesn't feel right, then it's not gonna click. And for me, I don't think the structure of Girl from the North Country matched the music. And I think when we're speaking about Girl from the North Country, all of my problems kind of come from this. And we'll explore this in a little bit more depth now. When we're looking at musicals that have tackled this in a similar way, I think the easiest and most apt comparison is something like Standing at Sky's Edge. That was another jukebox musical taking the music of an artist and kind of using it to underscore moments. However, the difference between Standing and Girl is the fact that Standing managed to tell these different stories and kind of limited it, even while jumping around these time spans and these different periods. Managed to limit it in places where they still allowed to give the stories a lot of depth. Here, despite having one setting, one location we're in the entire time, it feels like we're jumping between so many different plot beats that never really have enough time to actually get their foot in the door, actually manage to portray the story to the audience. And because of that, when these twists and turns are coming, and even when the music is coming in, I don't really feel anything. The music is here to punctuate, but it's so important in musical theatre that the music add to the story. When a character is feeling so much in a musical, they sing. And that song is a journey to take you from one point in a character's position, in their status, in their feelings, in their emotion, to another. It should always transport you. It should always move this character journey along. And here, I feel like a lot of this music pauses. And it often pauses in moments where we most want to get to the drama of the story. The book is actually fairly strong. The book here is not bad, but it kind of weakens itself because it's a musical. And this has so many knock-on effects on the entire show that just sadly weakens it overall. Not just within the pace, but also how much time they have to dedicate to these stories. It's kind of a weird feeling because I do enjoy this music, and I do enjoy the staging of it, and I do enjoy a lot of what they present with it, but I can kind of see it and how the entire picture of the show is not benefiting enough from this music to justify it being a musical. Which feels harsh to say, especially for something that I do enjoy. But it feels like this musical is trying to have its cake and eat it too, and it's not succeeding in that because this music is getting in its way. Without the music, this play would be able to address a lot of the issues I'm going to go into. Or on the other hand, if it was a more traditional style musical, if the music was being written in a way that takes these character journeys forward, in a way that uses the lyrics to build upon these emotions and to build upon these characters, then maybe it could be a little bit more successful. I feel like this is probably what is the most jarring thing. It's how much do you see this music as continuing the story? Because I can see a world where people can really get into the Bob Dylan-ness of it all, can really understand and get what it's trying to say through that, but it feels like it's kind of being forced in and it doesn't really match, like trying to shove the wrong jigsaw piece into the puzzle. So let's speak a little bit more about this story and the music in conjunction with each other. This is a character-driven drama, as I said, it's a Eugene O'Neill style play, and yet I feel like I come out of it not really knowing these characters. There's a lot of characters we have here. We have this family, we have the two visitors, and we have the other family who are here for some reason. We have the dad, the mum, the daughter, the son, the other family's dad, the other family's mum, the other family's son, and the two visitors. That's 9 really important characters, as well as a suitor and a doctor. That's 11 characters, all with very complex relationships with each other, so many very interesting plot beats that we can get into, but with all of these characters interacting in all of these different ways, there's not enough time to focus on them. Because yes, 11 characters, but that's more than 11 relationships, because you have the dad and the mum, you have the mum and the daughter, the mum and the son, the dad and the daughter, the dad and the son, you have the preacher and the other family, you have the preacher and this family, you have the other visitor, the boxer and the daughter, you have the boxer and the mother, you have the boxer and you can kind of see, this is only tackling just a couple of these relationships. There's so many that this play tries to set up, and there's just absolutely no time to do this. Even if you break it down to like the bare minimum set of relationships that this play mainly focuses on, it still doesn't have enough time to flesh these out. And because of that, a lot of what this play is trying to do kind of feels sadly a bit null and void. On paper, this should be a dream for me. I love a character-driven play. I love complex relationships. And it's successful in its concept, but not in its execution, because every time we start to get into these characters and into the journeys and into how their relationships are growing and changing, we stop for 5 minutes to sing a Bob Dylan song. I want to illustrate how the pieces are here. So let's break down these characters one by one. We have the dad. This character and a lot of his relationships kind of feel like the ones that the play actually gives a lot of apt time to. He feels quite grounded. It's very Fiddler on the Roof, which I also caught the Barbican version of, the Regent's Park Barbican version of recently, where he's trying to set up his daughter with a very, very old suitor. The play explores a lot of her resentment towards him because of that. There's a lot of interesting themes around adoption. There's interesting themes of race relations as well, as a black daughter being adopted by a white family in the 1930s. Before a lot of the civil rights movements and before a lot of the impactful change that was made in America. The father here is also having an affair. He has a relationship with one of the tenants in the building, which is explored, but that's probably one of the elements that they could dedicate a little bit more time to in the father's story. So yes, there's a lot of layers to his character, and it's interesting to see his relationships, but I kind of... It's going to feel like such a backhanded compliment. It feels like this is the character we shouldn't be spending the most time on. While he's the patriarch of this household, and it makes sense to spend some time on him, he's not the most interesting character. And I'm kind of a little bit baffled why he's the one that we're kind of centered on. When you also have characters like the mother. The mother is suffering from dementia. This musical has a lot of really weird ways with how it tackles mental health discussions. Some of which, especially with the mum, I can kind of forgive for the era it's set in, but so much of the time it feels like the play sets this up for comedy, and sometimes it feels a bit icky because of that. That's a really weird way to phrase that, but I guess I'll go with it. It feels outdated with how it tackles it, but not in a way to illustrate how that was negative. How we can look back on a piece of history and present these relationships, how they were actually quite like how they present a lot of the race relations in this play. Looking back on history, looking at how we treated certain groups of people and recognizing why that was bad, showing it from their perspective. Whereas I feel like a lot of how this tackles dementia and, as we'll discuss a little bit later, with learning difficulties and potential autism, it feels like the play is just presenting this, and honestly in certain moments presenting it comedically, that it kind of left a bad taste in my mouth, and it didn't really feel like it was criticizing how people were treated, or even adding a certain element of commentary onto it, which is another problem that just kind of comes from the lack of depth here. With more time on this, they could gather a clearer viewpoint, what they want to say more with this character. There's a lot of interesting way that she interacts with all of the different characters, with the family relationships that she has, the people who she's close to, how much she actually knows and remembers. So while I like some of what it presents here, it feels like it's not really enough. And we continue this trend with the son. The son has a kind of overall plot point of struggling to find work. Whether that be because he doesn't want to, or whether that be because he can't find it. That's his key relationship with his father, that's a lot of the discussions they're having. So the dad is pushing more and more for his son to find work, to settle down, to move out. And yet, the musical tries to set up an emotional beat here with a relationship that breaks up in the first scene that we see it in. If we, as an audience, have not seen this relationship, then why do we care? If we don't understand who they are together and what they're losing, why would a breakup have any impact? And that's my biggest problem with the son's story in this show. It's all hinging on this one relationship we never see. So any emotional weight that can be taken out of the son's story doesn't really click with me. They do have a lovely Bob Dylan song they sing together, but it also comes after the breakup. So again, it hasn't really done the legwork to earn the emotional impact that it wants to have. The son gets like two scenes in this play, to a point where I wonder why this subplot was included in the first place. If there was any character whose role I would minimize a lot more in this show, it would likely be the son. Just keeping a lot of the moments that we see with him and the dad and that job that they're bringing up, that feels satisfactory enough for this story, rather than adding in this extra element that isn't really earned. The daughter, I'm kind of on the fence of a little bit. If you've seen Fiddler on the Roof, you know the storyline that this daughter gets, except the father is less cool than Tevye. The daughter in this musical is pregnant, she's being very secretive about who the father is, and her dad tries to set her up with a much, much older suitor. A relationship that she's very against and tries to get herself out of. They try and set up an alternate relationship for her, but again, like with many of my issues with this musical, it doesn't have the time to really make this feel earned. It feels like it kind of just shoves these two characters together and then suddenly they're running away. There's not the time to make this grow, and it's a shame because it feels like this should be the focus of the musical, especially with, as I'll discuss next, the boxer and her, their relationship, and what this crafts here feels like it should be the main structure of this musical. It feels like this is the story with the most weight. This feels like the story with the most emotional bandwidth within it to pull out, to explore. Because without it, we're losing so much of a story that could have so much depth. I promise I speak about the boxer next, but his story mostly links into the daughter. He's a character with a lot of interesting elements to him, but some of the twists and turns that this play reveals are done in the final scene where we're never gonna see him again, so it's just kind of left in the air. We could explore some really interesting themes and some really interesting ideas here, but it's revealed way too late to ever actually do that. And there's the man he enters the house with, the preacher, who, is just kind of there. He walks in, he fucks up, and leaves. Can't be mad about that. He knew his job. His impact should feel massive, but at the end of the day, it kind of feels a bit minimal, especially because a lot of his attitudes and what he sets up is mainly related to the other family. If you want to know how much of an impact the other family have on this musical, you can probably infer it from the fact I just call them the other family. I don't really understand why they're here. So much about them is kind of skipped over or not given enough depth because, again, the musical doesn't really have time to do that. And so their impact on the musical kind of feels a bit pointless. This also features a parallel to the mother in their son, who is a character who has certain learning disabilities, potentially autism, and I think there's moments where it handles it well, but I really had a bad taste in my mouth about how the storyline ends. Maybe I'm missing a certain level of commentary that they're trying to make on it, but it feels like a bit of a misfire here. And so much so, if there is more to gain from this, if there's more to see as an audience member, I'm struggling to see it because we've got so many different things going on. We've got plot beats here, we have character relationships there, and never really have enough time to actually ground themselves fully. There's also this character of the Doctor. He is a figure who kind of appears now and then in the musical, but he is our central narrator and kind of pops up like 3 times in the musical to narrate things. I don't think his presence is ever strong enough to justify his narration. And I also think it probably would have been more beneficial to have a character more so within the main action be the narrator. I think there's a lot of candidates who could potentially be a stronger narrator for this. You could have someone who's more unreliable, like the preacher, but I do think someone within that family could have been a stronger one, like the father, like the daughter, or even doing an interesting thing with the mother. someone who is kind of losing a lot of her agency to her illness, to her dementia, being able to have these moments of more clarity. I think that could have been maybe an interesting dynamic, and maybe that could have helped to underline a lot of these key themes that I do think the musical kind of misses with the commentary on dementia. As you can see, my general problem with this musical is the depth. Because we're spending so much time stopping to dedicate to this Bob Dylan music. This music that is fantastic, but isn't really integrated well enough to actually bring the story forwards. These two ideas are kind of butting into each other, where we can't really explore all of these interesting relationships because they're not really using the time effectively. Do you know what this would be great as? This would be a fantastic mini-series. Give me 5 episodes, integrate the Bob Dylan music, set it in the same location. It would probably be really great with that additional time to actually spend getting really deep into these characters. But as a 2-hour 30 musical, we just simply don't have the time to do that. It wastes so much time with the music that adds so little. It has way too many plots leading to so little. And because of that, I come out of it feeling so little. I can't really emotionally invest myself in these characters because simply I just don't know them well enough. And it's sad because I can see so much potential with it, but it just fumbles the bag for me. So yeah, that's my main issue with Gough and the North Country. I think when we're discussing everything else, I am slightly more positive. I enjoy this set. It's quite simple. These panels kind of create the different areas of the house. I probably would have preferred a more naturalistic set as well, but I can't say what they present isn't effective, especially with this panel that opens up slowly to reveal these absolutely gorgeous background shots in certain moments where they really want the piece to feel more expansive. These especially coming out in a lot of the songs and a lot of the Bob Dylan music, that does add a certain extra element to it. But I wonder if there was a way to integrate these a little bit more closely, so we could have a more natural set for the play, for the text of it, for the book that is a lot more grounded, and being able to make it more ethereal and big and wide and expansive when we're getting into the music. And as I said, while I don't really love these numbers as they're placed, I can't say the staging is bad. There's some really cool moments of choreography, certain imagery when all of these characters come together. I think especially a number like Hurricane is really, really impactful and poignant. I love a lot of the actor Muso staging in it. Even if there are some awkward moments where you see certain characters just walking halfway across the stage to get to the instruments at the front, that kind of does take you out of it a little bit. But like a lot of the tambourine playing, a lot of how they integrate their music into their movements is really well staged and choreographed. Honestly, one of my favourite simple pieces of staging in any of the numbers is really, really small, but it's just a moment where Joe Scott, the boxer, is singing on one mic. They set another mic next to him, and he just really quickly shifts himself, dragging himself across the stage to the other mic, bring it down and singing into it like that. It's a really cool, like, swift piece of movement that looks really dynamic. It's got some really cool dynamic staging, but again, because of a lot of the issues of this book and this music, I can't really feel the full effect of these because they're not really driving the story forwards. Finally, I'll speak a little bit about these cast members. I think that this cast are really, really strong. I think they do as much as they can to add depth to these characters, which I have to admit, there's a lot that it leaves unsaid that does make it quite easy for these actors to step up and fill in a lot of these gaps. There's a lot of really interesting dynamics between Colin Collar as Nick, Katie Braben, who has some fantastic vocals as Elizabeth. She gets to sing like a Rolling Stone and does it spectacularly. I'm so happy that we have Katie Braben back on a West End stage. Well, this is technically off West End. Back on a London stage. Because, oh my god, she is a star. I really like a lot of the dynamics that Colin Bates creates as Jean, as the son. I realise that I haven't been calling them their character names, I've been calling them kind of their role names, so it's going to be weird if I start calling them their character names now. Alongside Justina Kahinde as Marianne, who is the daughter, this family have a really interesting dynamic that I do enjoy them exploring. I do think what these actors do very successfully is explore their relationship as a troupe, their closeness with one another, these little moments of connection that are really, really sweet, and really show you a lot of who they are as a band of characters, as a family. They do feel very believable in that. Sifiso Mazibuko is an outstanding supporting cast member as Joe Scott. Some spectacular vocals here as well. His voice lending really well to Bob Dylan's style of music. And finally, we have Eugene McCoy, who I want to discuss, who commits so hard to this weird, creepy Reverend character, which makes a character whose role in the play is fairly minimal feel so much larger. It's as close to chewing the scenery as you can get in a story that is as naturalistic as this. It's hard to sum up a musical like Gough in the North Country because I could see everything it's trying to go for. I can see so many different ways where I could really click with it. There's interesting characters here, there's so many dynamics. But it's just simply a matter of depth and time. Because of how it's been set up, because it's a jukebox musical, it struggles to really dedicate the moments it needs to develop these characters, to a point where the pace of the show feels really, really slow. I know I've come down quite hard on it, and I know I'm very critical of it, because I did struggle a lot to really emotionally connect with this material in the way that it's presenting it, but there is potential in here. I just think a musical is the wrong way to tackle it. A miniseries, a play, a film, these all feel like different genres that this type of story would benefit more from, or even a more classic musical. Because I don't think in the way that they've structured it, the Bob Dylan music really, really helps to push that story along. And I think that's what's going to be make or break for you with Gough in the North Country. If you love Bob Dylan's music, if you can really get deep down into the emotion of that music, then I feel like you're probably going to come out of Gough in the North Country a lot more positive than I was. But for me, I really struggled to click with it, which is a shame for such a character-driven play, the type of play that I normally really, really love. But what do you think? This play has been massively successful. And as I said, there are people who really don't like it or really, really love it. And I think that just absolutely portrays what is amazing about theatre. So, what do you think about Gough in the North Country? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Either way, it's absolutely fine, but I would love to hear your opinions in the comments down below. If you did enjoy this video, please consider hitting like and subscribe. It really helps me, it helps out the channel. Here's some links to some other videos on screen right now, and a huge thank you to our channel members who keep the lights on around here. But that's it for me today, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!